So, recently I was listening to the Something Rotten podcast where Blake Hester, Super Eyepatch Wolf, and Channel Muse Jacob Geller were discussing Silent Hill 2, a game I consider one of my favorite experiences of all time. I haven't played it in 20 years, but as they talked about the journey from the hospital to the historical society to the jail to the labyrinth, I could vividly picture each area, each twisted encounter, each unnerving set piece. And as I was reflecting on the incredible design of the game's spaces, a thought popped into my head. I wish the game didn't have combat so I could just wander around and drink in the unparalleled horror atmosphere. And as I was composing a tweet in my head to say exactly that, I began to anticipate a counter-argument. Part of what makes Silent Hill 2's environment so oppressive and unsettling is the hassle of combat. The threat of running out of ammo, the tension of taking damage and trying to flee, the potential for each room transition to throw you into danger. And I fired back, yeah, but the combat isn't fun, it sucks to do, it's clunky. And I received back in response, yeah, exactly. If the combat was fun, you'd want to do it. Instead, you want to get away from it. Mission accomplished. Touché, imaginary Twitter arguer. Touché. This internal debate reflects a problem I'm having as a capital G gamer of a certain age with a family and life responsibilities. I only have so much time to put into a game, and I don't want to do things that aren't fun. And yet, the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring are some of my favorite games of all time. Not you, Sekiro, fuck off. And those games are hard, full of arguably unfun design elements. The run from Firelink Shrine to the Four Kings boss fight sucks ass, I hate it. Same with the run to the Duke's Dear Freya in Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 3 has an endgame boss with 3 phases, one of which is a 2-on-1 gank. So maybe I actually like challenging games and the rush of catharsis you get from teaching yourself to conquer formerly daunting obstacles? Except, what I enjoy doing is learning how to cheese my way through challenges, how to exploit enemy AI, how to find overpowered gear early, and in the case of most FromSoft games, I enjoy summoning other players to even the odds. I'm not doing the Abyss Watcher's boss fight by myself when there's 2 perfectly good NPCs waiting just outside the door. If I do decide to solo tough bosses in these games, it's only to try out overpowered builds or hilarious I win buttons like Azure's Comet in Elden Ring. I've beat Melania legitimately 1 time with an incredibly cheesy build and a maxed out Spirit Ash, and I just don't fight her on subsequent runs. Anyway, a couple weeks ago I played through the new Lords of the Fallen game because some of my favorite Soulsborne lore nerds recommended it. I got through about 40% of the game without exploits or cheese tactics, but as I started to hit yet another multi-phase boss, or yet another 3-on-1 or 5-on-1 boss gank, I just felt myself lose interest. I ended up turning on God mode and just blasting through the back half of the game over 2 nights. Same with the new Special World in Mario Wonder. The Special World has the hardest levels in the game, and I've beaten all of them except for Climb to the Beat. I tried it, I kid you not, 100 times. Couldn't do it, turned on cheats, fuck you, I win. But then, after beating Baldur's Gate 3 on balanced difficulty, I started 2 new runs on Tactician difficulty. Turns out knowing the game makes Tactician pretty easy, but still. Why do I seek out some challenges and enjoy the rush of working at them, and other times I give up and cheat my way through? Why do I stick with one hard game and give up on another? Pondering that makes me think about the design concept of friction. That's a term I know from my time working in marketing and user experience, and it's one of the big beasts you have to learn how to manage. The marketer wants to eliminate friction from ad copy and websites to ensure the user makes it through the entirety of a marketing message without giving up or getting pissed off. Or they want to add friction between the audience and any fine print they'd rather you didn't notice. That is why it's called fine print. The user experience designer is always hunting for places where the target user is getting stuck, is slowing down, is bailing out. The UX designer wants to eliminate that friction so the user can complete their tasks. Or, in some cases, the designer might add friction to tasks that the business wants to prevent. Have you ever tried to cancel a subscription? Ever noticed that the screen is pretty hard to find? It was designed that way. Or, more ethically, a confirmation pop-up is an example of friction too. Asking, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Adds more steps to completing a task, but it might prevent a user from making a huge mistake. In video games, what I call friction is often called difficulty or challenge. And in video games, there's a whole different calculus in regards to what to do with it. Because a lot of the time, games are engaging by virtue of not being able to just mindlessly sail through them. FromSoft's Soulsborne games wouldn't be as beloved as they are if anyone could just waltz through from start to finish in an afternoon. But then, why do I hate Sekiro? It's beautiful, it's by the same company that did 5 of my favorite games, what's the problem? Well, for me personally, while Elden Ring and Sekiro both contain ample friction, Sekiro lacks interesting decision-making regarding that friction. There are no summons, there is no grinding, there aren't really builds. There is simply you and your ability as a gamer to master the combat system in the way it was designed to be mastered, and I found that system to be boring. So, for me, friction gave way to frustration. In any given fight, I knew what I needed to do, I knew the buttons to push, I knew to look for enemy tells and manage my posture and all that, but by the time I got to the Owl Father, I just couldn't keep up with the difficulty, and I didn't find the combat engaging enough to want to practice. And in Sekiro, that's kind of a hard limit for the player. You don't have any other tools to explore. Compare that to Elden Ring, where there are hundreds of builds and tools and tactics you can try to beat a boss that's kicking your ass. Try a faster weapon, or a stronger weapon, respec into magic, use perfumes, level your summons, play with a friend, worst comes to worst, you can grind levels. These are, to varying degrees, interesting options that I find engaging to experiment with. Did you know the Great Shield Soldier Ashes can stunlock Melania in her first phase? Did you know the Great Envoy Horn Bubbles can annihilate larger bosses in seconds with a little faith? Did you know you can rush the Ant Spur Rapier the minute you get your horse and then come back and embarrass Margit with rot damage? I love that shit. For me, friction becomes frustration when I, as the user, the player, can identify it, can sense it, but feel as though I don't have control over it. That level in Mario Wonder, Climb to the Beat, I knew what I needed to do. I got 3 jumps from the top a dozen times, but the timing of the level demands perfection by the end. You cannot make a mistake. Combine that with the weird way that wall jumps work in Mario, and my feeble gamer hands just could not do what was being asked. I cycled through badges, I put it down and came back later, I got a little drunk, but no matter what I did, I physically could not make it happen. Every other special world held delightful friction, but Climb to the Beat became unwanted frustration. On the other side of things, with Lords of the Fallen, I felt like I had lots of interesting choices in how I could play, but ultimately I think the game had like 2 ideas on how to be hard, and after 20 hours of it I'd had my fill. Your mileage may vary. But regardless of my personal tastes, we do have to come back to an interesting question. Should games never be frustrating? Should they always be fun or provide interesting choices? Obviously, fun and frustrating are subjective, but just in the broad sense, I do agree with the folks who say that not every game needs to be fun or minimize friction for the player. I'm sympathetic to the critics who lament the way fast travel makes open worlds less engaging sometimes. I'm sympathetic to players who, if a game lets them, cannot help from overpowering themselves and then removing all difficulty. Aside from those being valid just because differing tastes are valid, it is the case that video games represent a kind of interactive art piece, and that artists are within their rights to create something challenging, something that pushes and stretches the audience, something that explores discomfort or confusion or annoyance. Those negative emotions are part of the human experience. Why shouldn't an artist paint with those colors? At the same time, video games as art exist at the intersection between artistic design and player execution. The player is a necessary collaborator for the piece, otherwise it would just be a movie or a fancy diorama or whatever. And unfortunately, video games are also a consumer product. I spent $50 on Lords of the Fallen. Am I happy that I helped reimburse the team that designed those incredible levels and great sound effects and hired those awesome voice actors? Absolutely, Lords of the Fallen is an audio-visual feast. But I didn't buy an art book or a film. I bought a game to play for enjoyment after a long day of work and parenting, and halfway through that game, I stopped enjoying it. So who failed? The designers for not keeping me engaged, or me for denying myself the greater pleasure of mastering the game? For me, no one failed. The team and I collaborated on a performance piece called Lords of the Fallen Phil's Desktop Edition, and it just ran its course after 20 hours. I ain't mad about it. It was an experience. Some of it was extremely enjoyable, some of it wasn't. It is what it is. But to wrap up, let's bring it back to the thought I began with. Silent Hill 2 is a masterpiece of game design, with all elements working in concert to create one of the most moving and memorable gaming experiences of my entire life. And that includes the clunky, friction-full combat. It is trying to manage or escape that combat that creates a sense of dread at unopened doors, a sense of uneasiness when you hear sounds from off-screen, and a sense of reluctant relief the very few times you find a safe area. Silent Hill 2 uses the fear of its enemies and bosses and ambushes as colors to paint with, notes to compose with. But the game did have difficulty settings. In fact, it had separate difficulty modes for both puzzles and combat. The game wouldn't let you remove either entirely, nor should it, but it seemed open to letting you make them trivial if you wanted. I would make the case that the game wanted you to see all of it, and it was confident that it could enthrall you even on easy. To put it a different way, Silent Hill 2 seems to believe that you will lose nothing if you finish the game having had a slightly easier time, which I think is correct. So then, what about Sekiro or Lords of the Fallen? What if, deep in the settings, there were, say, sliders for enemy health or damage or speed, like what Rogue Legacy 2 or Celeste did? Would you lose something if you finished the game having dialed one or more of those down? And yeah, I can hear the Get Good squad saying you would have cheated yourself, you would have not experienced the glorious vision that the auteurs intended, you would have lost the ecstasy of victory and the sublime sense of accomplishment. Perhaps, but I was never going to finish Sekiro or Lords of the Fallen. I was never going to have that catharsis, period. Without God Mode, both games would have been sitting in my Steam list, uninstalled, hidden, and half finished for the rest of my life. All of the great auteur work in the back half of those games would go unappreciated. If there had been granular difficulty sliders, it's entirely likely I would have beaten those games legitimately, just with a challenge that was a better fit for my skill level. I would have experienced 80% of that carefully designed friction instead of 0. So which is the greater tragedy? Art that is experienced in an imperfect way, or art that is never experienced at all? Is it better to maximize the amount of players who can complete a game, or is it better to maximize the pleasure of only the most dedicated subset? Is there value in a game that sits forever unfinished on a shelf? If only philosophy had a God mode.